So I guess we can start the session now. Okay, welcome to the session. In this session, we have an invited talk for an hour, and we have another paper presentation for half an hour. For the invited talk, we invite Professor AStavrou from George Mason University to give us a very interesting talk. And before the talk, let me introduce Professor AStavrou a little bit. Professor AStavrou is an associate professor and associate director of the Center for Secure Information System at the George Mason University, and he's interested in researching the large systems security and survivability intrusion detection system, and most important of all, the security for mobile devices. Here, I would like to Professor AStavrou received the Young Faculty Research Award in 2010 in the CS department. Yeah, so I believe that he will bring us a very interesting talk. His talk title is the Scalable Software Testing for Android Challenges and Opportunities. I can't wait for the talk. Hope you also enjoy it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm going to try to keep it on schedule. So I would like to proceed with the talk, and then I would like people to ask questions at the end of the talk, or if something comes up and it's urgent, you can just ask. So today I'm going to be talking about, I think, a new area that has opened up for software engineering and security, which is actually in the middle. It's the software testing for Android. And I will show you today that software testing is something that extends a little bit beyond what we have heard so far about typical software testing, because unlike desktop applications that we have established software practices, for mobile technologies, that's not the case. If you take a look at, I got this from Gartner, the maturity of technologies that they believe to have reached the mainstream, you will find out that the mobile application stores are with us for less than 10 years, for less than 2 years, which means it's on the right side, which means that although we have, for example, internet TV and private cloud computing on the peak, we are actually just before the new era of having very, very big Android stores that are going to be enterprise-wide, and we have seen so far 3 big ones. The Apple Store is there. We have also now the Android Store, Windows 8, tablet, and the new phone from Microsoft has its own store. And actually, companies like Amazon and recently smaller ones, they start having their own application stores. Of course, part of the problem is, if I'm going to go to explain that part of the problem is security. If you take a look, again, from the same source, from the business point of view, what are the top 10 business priorities? They care about increasing the enterprise growth, basically reducing the cost, delivering new needs. If you take a look, now what happened, this is basically the top 10 technology priorities. Security comes number 9. It's not even in the radar. So which means there is a disconnect basically between, however, mobile technologies is number 2. So everybody wants to go into the mobile market. They understand the business need, but they don't understand the need for having security. Today in this talk, I will explain to you why having security and why having software testing and software reliability is really important, especially in a mobile device, much more so than in a desktop environment. So this effort is part of an effort that we have with NIST, and Jeff Boas and other folks from NIST are highly participating, and they're actually, my talk is basically reflecting efforts that are covering efforts that are across academia and DARPA and NIST. And the high-level part of the project is we would like basically, what is the main problem? We have an app store, and that app store has applications that now find their way potentially to remote areas or even to garrison or even enterprise mode within the military or even commercial use. Part of the problem is that the store that delivers the application is not really responsible to vet the applications currently. So Apple or Google, they are not interested in having your phone applications tested for security or reliability because it's not part of their business model. But on the other hand, they have a lot of app developers, many of them from all around the world, being able to submit applications in this app store that, again, they find their way potentially into critical infrastructure. The big problem with this model is very good because it has a very, very good impact for the user. Do you know what it is? It's the first time that the user is part of the feedback process for quality control of the application. So if a user doesn't like an application, the user can take off the application from the phone and replace it with a better one. The problem, though, is this feedback, although good and the model good because it's a per-pay model, has one fundamental problem. Who is responsible for the security of or reliability of the software that's been delivered to the mobile device? How many of you have downloaded a game or an application for your mobile phone, but you potentially don't know who was the software developer, or you haven't heard of the software developer, and you also haven't heard of what is that the application is doing? The application has a description, but you don't really know exactly what the application is doing. So the big question is, and why do we care? Why do I care? I believe that, I'm doing the same thing for my desktop device. I'm downloading things from the internet. Usually I install them, and they work fine. The problem with the mobile device is that, unlike most people realize, it has a very complex code base. It is actually a fully functional Linux system. It actually has a lot of proprietary device drivers with which we have no access to code at all. And there is also the model that we have, especially for Android, is a very permissive policy model, which means that the moment that you grant an application permissions, that application has these permissions perpetually. That's not how we're used to be doing things in practice. And actually, if I ask people if they can list how many different ways your phone can track you, do you know? It's there. 3 different ways. The phone actually can track you 3 different ways. Even if you turn off your satellite GPS recording, the phone tracks you through the Wi-Fi and also tracks you through your cellular tower. So if anything meaningful has to come out of the phone, basically if you tether it to any network, that network connection automatically identifies where you are. Recently, people asked me about metadata. Why do we care about the location information? The truth of the matter is that, unfortunately, some of this geo information finds its way through applications to metadata, including images and photos. One of the biggest problems that one of the deployments had in a foreign country is that, do you know what people do when they have a new phone? They go around and take photos. They're going to take photos of themselves, photos of the surroundings. Unfortunately, these photos automatically are geotagged. If you upload these photos on a public social network like Facebook, guess what happens? Wherever you have been, or you are, is actually now broadcasted online. So the only thing that we have to do if we want to find where are people is to go on their social sites, download their photos, their recent photos, and see where they are. Part of the problem is that users don't know that. See, when you take a photo with your camera, the camera doesn't necessarily have a geotag. However, your phone does. And it's actually automatic. It's doing it for you. People tell me, I'm secure. I'm secure. I'm using antivirus, correct? I have an antivirus on my phone. I think I must be secure. We have done a recent internal study for DARPA Transformative Apps project. And we ran around 300 zero-day malware for mobile devices. How many of them do you think were detected? More than 70%, less than 100%. We tested 17 different products on antivirus products, they were products that had less than 3% detection rate, less than 3%. And they were products that, coverage-wise, were less than 50%. The current mobile antivirus also, what we found out, it drains the battery pretty quickly. And the commercial AV vendors were not very ready for what we wanted. They give very bad, as I said, similar results with their desktop counterparts. They cannot keep up with the new viruses and malware. And there is no guarantee for success of detection. They cannot identify non-pre-classified threats. For instance, if your phone comes with a logger that has been provisioned by your mobile operator, like Carrier IQ, for instance, they cannot actually identify that type of threat because they think that this is something that comes with a phone, and they whitelist this type of programs, even though these programs are the same ones that actually log you. Some of them, some of the antivirus have a callback function. So the moment that you run an application, the antivirus callbacks home, gives exactly which application and the MD5 of that to a database to check if it's an antivirus, but at the same time, reveals information about what you run and where you are. How bad, though, is it? Why do I need an antivirus? How bad is it in terms of malware? Do we see a lot of malware? Do we see very little malware? The truth is that from a study that we conducted, malicious applications exist. We analyzed more than, at this point, it's 300,000 applications from the Google Android market. We have thousands with incorrect permissions. People don't know how to write mobile program. They don't know how to do. They don't know what is the right permissions for mobile. They don't understand. Hundreds with excessive functionality that can be constituted as malicious. I can show you examples of malware, of applications that are chess applications, and they want to get your IMEI, and they want to get your contacts, and they want to get your phone number, and at the same time send an SMS, all just saying that we are a chess application. Some of them, Trojans. Basically, they take a legitimate application, Angry Birds, they put their code inside, they ship it to you, thinking that you're running Angry Birds, but at the same time, you do run Angry Birds, but at the same time, you run a virus too. Many of them, people ask me, who are the people who download these apps? Everyday people. They go online, they search for Angry Birds because that's the mode that they have used to. They click on it, they download it, boom, they're now infected. Part of the problem is, unlike what we want to believe, many people don't have a single store that they go to download their app. They do it over the web. Nowadays, Amazon forces you to click allow untrusted apps because it's just a different market from the regular Google application market. And if you do want to connect your device there, you have to basically disable the certificate that says that it's coming from Google. We have two very clear infection vectors, regular web search and search inside the mobile application market. See, even if these malicious apps are not the top 10 apps, people search using keywords. And this is exactly what the malware writers take advantage of. Because, for instance, there is the popular game Angry Birds. I don't know how many of you are familiar. The malware was named Angry Chickens. It managed to survive in the market for so much that more than 100,000 people downloaded. It's not a matter, it's a window of time that the attacker gets to you. And the question becomes, now you downloaded the Angry Chickens. Now you put it on your phone. Then what? What happens? Nobody's going to contact you and say, hey, and by the way, you have Angry Chickens, which is a malware on your phone. But the picture is a bit more complicated because this is not just a problem of someone planting malware in our mobile application store. Because if this was just a problem, that would have been something that could have been, we have mechanisms to mitigate. The problem is that we have developers that are not trained to write the right malware code, the right code. They don't understand what is the permission model of the mobile device and what they should be operating under. And from software engineering point of view, they create badly constructed code. They don't understand what are the security and policy requirements, they make mistakes, and they use third-party libraries and code. So basically, they are well-intended, but by Googling and creating code that you go out there, they don't understand what it is that they should be doing. They don't have any clear understanding of what is that I should be doing and how. And frankly, I mean, everybody here has written code. What happens when you write code that complains about security? What do? You go and you give yourself super user privileges. You give yourself all the permissions that you need to make the code work, and your product go out, and you don't really care if the product is actually running with the least privilege or any security requirements, just because now you just wanted this product to be released on the market. Because that's your goal. The goal is to reach out. There's no code quality control. Also, another problem is that the permission model for Android is neither sound nor complete, which means we have developed applications that can actually perform operations like transmit over the network without necessarily requiring the network permissions. Which means that if the model that Android has created can be bypassed, it can also affect the applications that you have on the market, because that's at the same time, you don't have to have the permissions. Also, we find out that there are a lot of loopholes. Intense, Reflection, JNI, WebKit, others, and the permissions are enforced only at the beginning, never in real time. There is no location-based enforcement. There is no time-based enforcement. There is no question about permissions. Do you want me to connect to the network now? I'm about to transmit your location information to a remote server. Do you want me to do it? All of this creates a picture that is, although the technology is moving forward, it moves forward in a manner that is not really controlled. So when we first started the project, we thought, OK, can we go out and see what exists, what are the existing software engineering and robustness tools, and how we can actually use them to fix potentially problematic code for Android. What we found out is that most of the commercial application testing tools cover normal. When I'm saying normal, vanilla desktop applications, they don't understand how to analyze mobile applications. They don't understand, because this is a new model. There is no security analysis of the code functionality. Another problem is no power analysis of the application. So for instance, what we found out is that we had applications that were very, very well written in terms of security, but very, very badly written in terms of power. So you were running the application, and within half an hour, your phone was drained. No battery. So part of the problem is, now you have another dimension in what you're trying to do is, OK, now my code is robust in terms of security, but maybe it's not robust in terms of how much power it eats. The problem is that part of the issue is that there is no profiling of the resource consumption of individual applications. To give you an example, if it's an application, you put an application on your phone, and it's all your network bandwidth, you won't be able to do anything about it, because there is no mechanism for you to assign to that application specific bandwidth or to provide specific restrictions. You cannot deny the access and use of phone subsystems. So for instance, you cannot say, I want to install Angry Birds, but I don't want Angry Birds ever to be able to have access to the network or store data in my local disk, and at the same time be able to play the game. Because the moment that you deny an application privileges, that's the moment that you cannot install the application. I mean, you have been users yourself. What is going to happen when you're given the user the option of either installing the application with all the permissions or not installing it at all? What do you think? It's an easy choice. They won't install the first application, they won't install the second application, and they will install all the applications after that. Also, if you take a look at the list of applications, of permissions that they require, you really require an expert to understand what is the permission set. Finally, what is the most problematic part is that existing tools do not cover or expose program functionality. It doesn't tell you that this is a chess program, but it wants access to your camera, to your microphone, and to your disk. It doesn't do that. It tells you, Fortify Coverity and a lot of other programs that are software testing programs that are part of the community tools, they tell you that the software is robust in terms of it doesn't have an SQL injection attack, it doesn't have, in terms of code quality. But you can have good code quality with bad functionality, nonetheless. So part of what we wanted to do and what we do is we reveal the application capabilities and access. So when you run an application, we want to be able to tell you, here's what the application is doing. Here's what the application is actually accessing on your phone or your tablet. So part of, basically, as I said, part of the process is that they do not cover program functionality, and they look for specific bugs, okay? So our app vetting and control constitutes of different things. For example, we want to basically have application signing and prevent unauthorized application execution. And someone can say, but wait, doesn't Android have this application signing already? Android has an application signing, but it's enforced only on the Google's certificate. So if you, as an enterprise, or someone as an enterprise wants to be able to say, I want to sign my apps and not run on the Android, they cannot do that. Also, the app signing process in Android, it works very well only if you don't bypass the Dalvik engine. Our app signing process runs below that, basically runs on the Android kernel. And the part of the problem is the customization made to Android package framework allows us basically to install our own modified packages, which I will explain why it's necessary in a bit. And then app analysis and testing, basically, or app analyze for malware and potential vulnerability, we do perform AV scans and vulnerability scans as part of this effort. I'm not saying that we discard them, but I'm saying that they are not enough. Expose hidden and unwanted functionality, potentially hidden in native libraries, dynamic or obfuscated code, permissions, manifest reconciliation. So an application says, I want access to your camera and your Wi-Fi, but in reality, either he never accesses the camera, or he accesses the camera, the Wi-Fi, and something else. We need to find out why is the case that what the application gave us up front with what we detected the application uses not the same. The big picture, and actually this is something that I keep reiterating with Jeff, is that you cannot expect the automated tools to do all the job for you. Unfortunately, human will be on the loop and will always be on the loop. The only thing that you can do is reduce his effort. So in general, for instance, for DARPA, what happens, an application is being submitted to the App Store, but it makes it to the App Store through a portal where we have an assessor taking a look at the results that we get from our application analysis tools. What we find out is that although, believe it or not, although many people say that it's easy to identify what's a malware, actually the definition of a malware is in the eye of the beholder, and different organizations have completely different policies and regulations of what's constituted to be a malware. Some of them have more lax policies, some have more strict policies, and you can have to have the assessor that will basically take a look and apply these policies to the entire system. Part of the program is that we have in-lab testing, in-field instrumentation, and we have a questionnaire which I didn't cover in this talk. But the idea here is that the in-lab testing part is the one that we focus, and we believe that is crucial for this effort. Okay. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about about this part. So let me ask you something. How many different UAs can you install apps on a mobile device? Do we know? I'm sure you all know the regular way. You go to your phone, you click on the app market button, you go to the market and you download the app, correct? We do know that. Is there any other way that you can install applications? Yes, thank you. You can actually install applications without even showing up through connecting your device to your USB and basically pass the application directly through the USB port. Unfortunately, the two different ways, most people don't know how to handle. So for instance, and to give you an example, an MDM wouldn't be able to handle the USB part necessarily. It will be able to handle the one that you will do over the wire, but the one that you do the actual wire, which is your USB, it might go below the radar because they don't hook up necessarily to whatever is installed through USB. That was another thing that basically we had to look for, any possible ways that you can actually have data injected into the phone. And also, what we found out that application stress testing is important. So for instance, you take an app, and the app works very well for a specific device. You move this app to a completely different device, like a tablet, just change the display. You run a random test of the UI. The UI crashes because now the UI was designed for a smaller device. Now you moved it to a bigger device. It's not longer working as it should. And the stress testing also, it measures power consumption and identifies potentially input errors and UI bugs, which is something that most people think, most people think this part is trivial. This part is where we see a lot of things fail, especially when you have multiple devices that you want to support. So our permission model has, what we do basically is to do Android-specific analysis of the application security manifest, and we verify that the requested permissions are warranted by the submitted code. So what we do basically is we take the code. We don't need source code. We can actually do it with binaries, which is a big differentiator for other people. We take the binary code of the Android application, we decompile it, and we find out exactly what it does by static and dynamic analysis. And then we compare to the description that was given to us by the developer, metadata, potentially who is the company that created and other things, and its manifest, which is something that the developer submits to us as a security model. So we compare the two, and if there is discrepancy, we automatically point it out, but also we show the capabilities to an analyst. And the risk now is defined for this application based on these capabilities. So if an application has access to your contacts, your network, and your storage, it's more risky than an application that doesn't have network access and reads your contacts. Because at that point, he won't be able to exfiltrate the data because according to the model and what we find out, it doesn't have network access. So the second piece, which I think is important, is to regulate access to critical and restricted resources. We basically modified the Dalvik engine to allow dynamic policies. And the dynamic policies includes the following. This application will never have access to the network. But how do we do that? We don't do that with a classical way, asking the user at the beginning. We let the application believe that he has access to the network, but we instruct the sandbox, which is the Dalvik engine, to report to the app that there is no network. So two applications that sit on the phone, one of them has access to the network, the other does not, based on our policy on the Dalvik engine, which means the following. You can have an Angry Birds application which wants to connect to the network. For this specific application, the system reports that we are in airport mode, and there is lack of resource. There's no permission denied. It's not security permission denied. It's a lack of resource. We explain to the app that there is lack of resource the same way that the app expects to have potentially be in airport mode. In that case, the app doesn't crash or fail because it has a gracious way of dealing with the lack of resource, including potentially the lack of camera. For instance, for the camera, we lock the camera by telling the application that there is another application at this moment accessing the camera. So this way, we create an environment where we control the resources that the app has access to dynamically. And another example I usually give is that, imagine we are all in this room, and let's assume that my GPS was good enough for us to pinpoint us to the NIST building. I would like to be able, while I'm in NIST building, to have access to all the Siri documents, including my presentation, my bio. And the moment that I leave this building, my phone would not to have access to that info, even if it's stored locally, since we can control that. In our scenario, in this scenario, we can support that type of permissions which are location-based. So basically, you can be in a location and have access to resources. The moment you leave that location or you get further from that location, you can actually have yourself removed from the list of permitted things that you can do, including opening apps or connect to the network. Part of the problem, part of why we wanted to do that is because we want to basically avoid this part, data exfiltration. And we do believe that for mobile devices, the problem is data-centric. Just to give you an example, if you think about your phone, what is the most important thing that you have on your phone? Can you think of it? So to give you an example, if I break down your phone, but you know that all your data on your phone are secure and you can actually reboot your phone with your data within hours, you won't be that upset. But if I tell you that I took your phone and now I have access to your data, that's where you are upset about. The actual device is not important. What is important is the data that you have in that device. The security, reliability, and accessibility of the data. That's the most important thing. So if someone is able to exfiltrate or insert data there that potentially pollute your data, that means that we haven't done our job correctly. So basically, the idea here is that we want to be able to have application and data to be installed, but confined and deprived access to resources and data selectively, according to what we want. And for this point is, I don't want to, a lot of people believe that by having this system is an easy task. Actually, the most difficult part is how do you write policies for this system? Because you can have an SE Linux type of policy, but as we very well know, writing the policy for each app is very difficult. In our case, the policies are very high level and very easy to write because basically you can say, I don't want access for this, and this functionality. And at that point, the functionality is high level, which allows you basically to have very simple policies. You don't have to have elaborate policies where you have to list, if you deny storage, you don't have to list all the potential files that can be generated in the storage. You just say no access to storage. So I will speak a little bit about our powering metering framework. We have another paper in this conference which one of my students will go very, very much into details. The idea here is that we want to be able to do accounting and policing of energy consumption. And what we want to do basically is want to be able to identify two things. How much an application is consuming, why does it need to consume that? And if there is a discrepancy, for example, someone changed this application in the device, if we can identify it. I won't go into much of details. I urge you to go in this talk. The idea here is that we can actually understand and measure energy consumption for each application and process, and be able to create a system where we account for mobile device resources as accounted for an application. So, as part of this effort, NIST actually right now hosts an application testing portal. We call it ATP, which does the following. It's actually a system that is agnostic to any application store that you might have. So you have an application store. This application store is getting a submission for an Android application and automatically submits this application to this application testing portal. This portal is tasked to perform tests on this application. So basically, the application does not make it to the market until it clears this application testing portal. And how do we do that? We basically enforce all the devices that we issue to pay attention to a certificate that is signed by NIST. So if the application is not signed by NIST, which only happens, as I will show you at the end of this process, they won't be able, and I repeat, they won't be able to install the application. And you only can pass this process if you go through all the application analysis, and then this analysis is basically assessed by what we call a security assessor, who sits here and looks, and I will show you how it looks to the security assessor, looks at the reports. The moment that this assessor says thumbs up, the application goes to the market, back to the store, signed. The developer is we are completely agnostic to the developer. We don't have to even know who is the developer. But what we do know is that this developer has to be able, this developer is someone who is trying basically to give us enough code to run in our devices. In terms of the past use case, basically the App Store submits core bundle. We have a register submission, and we do a serial or parallel analysis of tools, tool 1, tool 2, tool 3. These tools create reports. These reports are bundled, and at step 9 we assess. If the assessor says, OK, pass, we sign the app, and this app is pushed back to the market. And at that point, the app becomes available, not before that. Just to give you an example of how a report looks like. This is the analysis of the HT logger, which is, or otherwise, Carrier IQ. So let me give you what would be a report that an analyst would have seen if he had done an analysis of the package of the Carrier IQ. It would have seen that this application reads logs, transmits via the network, stores data in the SD card, spy other applications. It's a service which remains background run, and it has access to GPS. Even if you don't know if this is a malware or not, it's just presented to you as an application. You can imagine that this application, with all these permissions and the capabilities, is very high risk, because it has all the capabilities which potentially are not warranted from the description of what you want to do. There might be a case where all these capabilities and access to the system are warranted by what the application is meant to be doing, but not in this case, for instance. So from high level, the ATP monitor sees applications on the NIST testing portal that says, for example, believe it or not, we get applications that they have Android compiler. The developers do not include everything in the bundle that they give us. And sometimes they do it without knowledge because they forget to include the third-party library. Sometimes they submit something that compiles for a higher or lower version of Android. So basically, the portal allows basically to understand that to have this type of situation where we have Android update OK, analysis complete. And then here, if you take a look, you have an approval that says the application is rejected or approved. So the application doesn't make it to the store if we don't approve all the steps. In practice, we do what we call defense in depth, because we have multiple levels of security. So basically, the application vetting and testing is one step. The device lockdown and encryption of all data is another step, which I'm not going to talk to in this talk. Enforcement of security policies and changes in the Android Linux kernel, which basically protect us to prevent attacks that bypass the Android security model and have other effects, for example, to Java native interfaces. How we see the risk in general, the risks are a big picture. I don't know how many of you are familiar. We have devices on the left. We have our system in the middle. And basically, we have all these other middleware and apps on the right, including Google's application, which, by the way, most people think that they're secure because they're by default included in your phone. But that's not always the case. Secure, verify, test, and deploy is the motto that we use. Basically, we secure things, then we verify them and test them, and then deploy them. One slide on the hardened Android platform. We have basically changed the platform to basically allow for different levels. I will be happy to talk to you offline. Unfortunately, I don't have that much time today. We have changed the security stack to have data at rest and data in transit protections, authentication, app vetting, and control. You will find out, for example, that the Bluetooth driver and the Wi-Fi driver here are disabled. It's part of our policy. The telephony server and TAPI has been either replaced completely or removed based on the deployment model. And we have developed different USB device drivers to allow us to vet and authenticate. We have added open source, OpenSSL, which is FIPS 140 certified, an encrypted file system, different things. In conclusion, assuring the secure operation of smart devices basically has a wide variety of requirements, and the application testing is a very, very big portion of it. And unlike your typical software testing that everybody's used to, this type of testing requires a different type of flavor, which means that we have to dig a little bit deeper and understand the functionality of the code. Not just code quality, but also functionality. We also need to be able to create tools that transcend static analysis to dynamic analysis, to do in-field instrumentation to get feedback, what happens when an application crashes, and power behavior, metering, and policy. Power is actually a very big difference from the desktop applications simply because we don't care about the consumption of battery in a desktop application. We don't do that. But in the battery in a mobile device is a very crucial and actually scarce, may I say, resource, because even myself, I find sometimes when I overuse my phone that when I try to use my GPS, my battery dies before even I reach my destination. The physical device security is important, but is a complement to the application testing. You cannot have a secure phone with insecure applications, period, because the applications are going to basically are a huge, huge part of the overall security model, and you cannot build secure devices with insecure apps. So at this point, we have like 8 minutes. I'm open to questions. Yes?
I'm not sure I understood correctly, but you mentioned that deployment of your system would be in between, before an application gets accepted.
Yes, very good. Let me bring that slide up, and I will be very happy. I will repeat your question, and let me know if this is what you asked. So you asked, where is the system located? The question is, where do this entire application testing system is located? So the idea here is that the system is located as a precursor to the application making it to the market. So you are a developer. You can submit the application to the market. At this point, your application is in pending mode. We pick up this application, we go to this cloud server, and perform the tests. If a security person gives thumbs up to the application, that application now is approved, and your submission of your application back in the market becomes signed and not anymore pending, but basically approved and in the market. That market there, the application store or application market, we don't care which market it is. It can be Amazon, it can be Google, it can be your enterprise market, it can be a bunch of 20 applications that you want to deploy for a specific mission. The good part about this process is that I can change the policy. So for instance, if your requirement goes from, I don't want any application to have network access to, I want all applications to have network access but encrypted, or your applications have to have encrypted storage, we can actually enforce this by going through this process and testing the apps. Because the profile of what you want to do, basically this app might be the same, but it might not meet the criteria that you set forth for the specific device or deployment.
Couldn't this be deployed to the actual user phone? Because it depends on the store using your technology.
Excellent. Thank you very much for bringing it up. Potentially what you could have done is when your phone tries to download an app, at that moment the app is basically tested and it reaches your phone, your personal phone, depending on the decision, or I give you back a report saying, this is what we believe the app does. Do you still want your app to be installed? And if you say yes, you get it. If you say no, you don't. Or this can be a policy decision. If someone else says no, then you don't get the app. But yes, it can be done on an individual device. It's just that for the purpose of the DARPA project, that's the model that we use. Yes?
Can you explain the motivation behind removing the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth drivers from the kernel?
Yes. So some of the, depending on the device, and depending, in our case, the tactical deployment didn't require those.
Right.
However, what we found out is that some of the drivers themselves were not open to us for inspection. Okay. And for us to be able to do, and I will tell you how we addressed it. So we have another deployment for DOJ, for Jenny Toigo at the Department of Justice, where we wrap those around encryption. So basically nothing that reaches the Wi-Fi driver is unencrypted. If you treat this block as potentially a problem, you don't want that block basically to become part of the critical path of unencrypted data. Yeah. So that's the reason. Okay. Yes?
The presentation is Android specific. Can you give a comment compared to the Apple?
Thank you for bringing it up. Again, the reason that this presentation is Android specific is because the project that we were involved with NIST, the DARPA project, was focusing on Android devices. However, in my talk, nothing from what I described in general terms cannot be applied for an Apple store or even a Windows 8 store. So basically the same type of techniques and the same type of problems persist throughout the mobile devices. It's just that the solutions that I presented were Android focused. But in general, we could have ported our system to an iOS platform. Yes? Yeah.
Device with government application. Everything you said, I think, applies if your device has been kind of either protected or something else has been added on it.
So this is a very, very good scenario that you're mentioning, but I will give you how this system can be applied in the bring your own device case. So imagine that I have my own device here, but I want to be able to protect myself. What we find out, first of all, is that users, when you explain to them that we will add an application to your phone, that before you install an application, this application is going to be submitted to this guy, and this guy is going to give you back a report that says, you know, maybe you don't want to install this app because of this and this and this. They follow that. Also, now you have a device that you bring, it has all sorts of applications that you bring at home, at work. This application, this phone can be docked before you enter the building. You can dock the device for like seconds. The device is being scanned by our system. All the apps are being verified as being good or bad because we don't have to scan the same application. If we have a report for one application, if we see it on another device and it's exactly the same app, we don't have to do the analysis yet again. You scan the device. If the device has no errors, you're allowed to connect. If someone brings a device and he wants to have Angry Birds but transmitting the location information, then you have a choice of policy to say, okay, either this device is going to attach to my network or not, and give a user a warning.
And also, I have a follow-up question. Because your scenario works, you put the phone for a few seconds only, basically, you read the list of applications, works if you can rely that that list of applications is honest, is truthful. Basically, what I'm trying to say, if your OS of the device is not being protected somehow, but you know that if I'm application ABC, I'm certain ABC, I'm not ABC clone.
Excellent. So what you're saying is that I cannot have the phone in non-fast boot mode, basically boot up mode, and do that. But what I'm saying is that I can do that even if you put your phone in fast boot mode because I can dump your entire partition. I won't have your operating system telling me what the apps are. I'm going to find out based on the fact that I put the phone in basically bare bones BIOS mode. Now, if someone, and let me put a caveat, if someone takes this device, hardware alters the device, has a new BIOS, it's not anymore BUI, it's a bring your own device, but this is a malicious device crafted to basically with a BIOS to bypass me, in that case, my system might not work. But if you're talking about a system that, indeed, you get a device from Verizon, you're not malicious necessarily, and you bring your device and you want to test it, then it will work. Yes?
Have you done the accuracy evaluation? In other words, have you been dumping into a lot of real malware and evaluate whether
yes.
your analysis, what's the percentage of your evaluation?
So see, in our situation, what we try to find out if we miss functionality that a malware has. I'm not going to tell you that an application is malware or not, because what we do is basically analyze what the application does. But you will find, I can show you reports where especially for the applications that use SMS, we even know the exact number that they try to call, the premium number, or the location in the internet that they try to submit the information. So basically, yes, we have done it for like very recent malware.
So what's the percentage you'll guess? Now, suppose we have repeating, say, 1,000 malware. How many of them you can really detect?
I mean, again, we don't try to detect the malware. We try to find out if the functionality, we try to unveil the functionality. So in that case, most of the malware, we can understand that there is a problem with the functionality. I mean, very high percentage, like 99%. Some of the malware crash. Some of the malware we cannot peer through because they have encryption. And basically, we need to let the malware go to get the key to basically. And also, the other thing that we find out is that the original application might not be a malware, but the update is a malware. Or the library is a malware. All sorts of corner cases. Also static analysis. Now, if your question is how many of them you can detect with static analysis, my answer to you is less and less, because they try to obfuscate the code. The dynamic analysis is what gives us most of the interesting juicy, because it runs the app. Yes? Yes, for that type of fine-grained permission enforcement, you need to basically change some of the libraries that run on Dalvik. So basically, insert yourself as a Dalvik, and that's part of that's what I talked about, the customized version of the Dalvik engine. The application testing happens off the device, but the enforcement when you run it on the device, unfortunately, requires changes, which might or might not be able to fit. I mean, we keep changing them every new version, but it requires basically maintenance, whereas this type of analysis is a bit more agnostic. I agree. Yes?
Concerning the dynamic analysis of the application, so do you have the application running in the application testing portal in a controlled environment?
Yes.
To check what it's doing?
Yes, and we do that not in an actual device, but we basically do it with an emulator that we created that runs on a cloud. And not the Android emulator, the one that they basically provide with its QEMU engine. I'm talking about something that's completely custom-made. Yes?
Can this be applied to test the security of the whole devices?
No, because that type of analysis now what we do is basically restricted in the application itself. So for us to be able to do security of the entire device is the type of question that was asked. We need to make sure that the device is in a mode that we trust, for example, in the BIOS mode. If you give me a device and the device already runs operating system, and if the operating system is compromised, anything that will get out of this USB port can potentially be compromised itself.
What about the pre-installed and customized?
That's exactly why we need basically to put your phone into this BIOS mode where these pre-installed applications are going to be exposed, because you will not have an operating system, compromised operating system running, but you will have the bare bones BIOS, and then you have to dump the entire device out and basically scan those. Any more questions?